My name is Iris McDonald, and I'm 36 years old. 4 hours after my older brother shattered my 6-year-old daughter's glasses in front of a garden full of guests, his accounts were frozen, his job access was suspended, and his wife's online store went dark. But none of that had happened yet. At the time, all I could hear was the sound of plastic snapping. Sharp, final, out of place in a space that had been built for wonder. My daughter's name is Lily, and she turned 6 last month. She's the kind of child who makes strangers soften mid-sentence, gentle, wildly imaginative, convinced that fairies exist and that adults are just big kids who forgot how to see them. She's worn glasses since she was 3, not for fashion, for necessity. Custom lenses, transition coating, special temples designed so they don't press behind her ears because of a mild neurological sensitivity that makes the wrong pressure feel like fire after a few minutes. She picked them herself. Pale lilac, glittering stars on the sides. She called them her magic specks. So yes, I went all out for her birthday. Why wouldn't I? I could afford it. I own 2 companies and help fund a third. I'm the one who quietly fixes things when systems break. The one who wires money without reminders. The one who doesn't announce what I cover or how often. Lately, some people in my family seem to forget who kept certain things running. The party wasn't loud, it wasn't flashy. It was beautiful. A fairy garden theme stretched across the backyard. Hanging lights woven through trees, mossy little tables, glowing jars filled with glitter, live acoustic music drifting softly through the air. And the centerpiece, a custom treehouse installation wrapped around the old oak, complete with a slide that curved down into a bed of flowers. When Lily saw it, she stopped walking. Then she smiled so wide it looked like it might hurt. She wore a flower crown and told everyone she was the queen of the forest. I didn't correct her. Childhood doesn't last long enough to edit imagination. My older brother John, arrived late. Hoodie, sneakers. Like effort was optional. His wife Marissa wore oversized sunglasses the entire time, even in the shade. Their kids stayed close, quiet, flinching at sudden sounds, eyes darting toward their parents before speaking. They handed Lily a single wrinkled gift bag. Inside was a puzzle that looked like it had been grabbed from a gas station shelf. My parents gave her an educational workbook. A workbook. Lily smiled anyway. She always does. She said thank you and hugged it to her chest like it mattered. That should have been my warning. She floated through the afternoon, drifting from table to table, showing guests her fairy crown, narrating elaborate stories about invisible creatures who lived near the koi pond. I stepped away briefly to talk to the balloon artist about a display issue near the gate. When I turned back, the air felt wrong. Then I heard it. Crack. The sound cut straight through the music. Lily froze. John stood near the pond, holding her broken glasses in one hand. Not angry, not joking, just calm. Too calm, like he'd been waiting for an audience. This, he said evenly, loud enough that 3 tables turned, is what happens when you act spoiled. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't need to. Maybe now you'll learn something. He handed her a pair of used rubber gloves from the maintenance bin. Pick up the trash. She did. She bent down slowly, her small hands shaking as she gathered napkins and wrappers from the grass. No tears, no protest, just obedience, like her body decided it was safer not to move too fast. I don't know what I felt in that moment. Not rage, not shock. Something colder. I didn't scream. I didn't confront him. I didn't make a scene. I walked over, gently took the gloves from her hands, lifted her into my arms, and turned toward the house. Behind me, no one spoke. My parents didn't move. Marissa avoided eye contact. Other guests stared, horrified, but silent. The quiet wasn't accidental, it was practiced. At 6 o'clock, I sent a message to the group chat. Thank you for coming. The party is over. People left quickly, awkwardly. John didn't argue. He didn't apologize. He thought it was finished. It wasn't. At 10 o'clock that night, my phone started buzzing. I didn't answer it. I was sitting on the edge of Lily's bed, watching her sleep. She'd crawled into mine sometime after midnight, like she used to when she was younger. One arm was wrapped around her stuffed fox. Her glasses were gone, broken, discarded earlier like they'd never mattered, but her hand kept drifting to the spot behind her ear where the temples usually rested. She hadn't cried. That scared me more than tears ever could. By the time my phone vibrated again, I already knew what was happening on the other end. Panic has a rhythm. I'd heard it before, in boardrooms, on late-night calls, in voices that had mistaken my silence for permission. I waited until Lily's breathing evened out. Then I stood up and went to my office. No makeup, no music, no distractions. I opened my laptop and logged into the system dashboard, the one John assumed I never touched anymore because I handled the big picture. I clicked through access logs, credentials, permissions. Every digital footprint he'd ever left behind lit up like a map. I didn't rush. I logged him out of everything, one by one. Internal platforms, supplier portals, shared drives, administrative tools he'd been coasting on for years because no one had ever challenged him. I flagged his profile for suspension and marked his last 3 invoices for legal review. Then I locked his cloud storage and transferred ownership of key documents back into my name. Next was finance. I sent a single message: freeze all budget allocations tied to John's side projects, effective immediately. No explanation needed. By then, footage from the party had already started circulating quietly among staff who'd attended with their families. No commentary, just the sound of plastic snapping and a child going still. At 10:17 p.m., Marissa called. I didn't answer. She texted instead. Hey, Iris, I think there's a glitch with our store payments. Also, John can't access his work email. Can you check? I closed the message and walked into the kitchen. I made Lily her favorite cereal, extra strawberries, cut small, and sat with her at the table while cartoons played in the background. She ate quietly. Still hadn't mentioned the glasses. By noon the next day, my phone was a storm. John had shown up at the office. His badge didn't work. His laptop locked itself after 3 failed attempts. Security flagged the activity and walked him out. I got the alert while standing at the sink, rinsing strawberries. I stared at it for a moment, then deleted it. At 2 o'clock, Marissa showed up at my house with a tray of muffins tied with a ribbon. Lily opened the door before I could stop her. Marissa crouched down and said something I couldn't hear. Lily looked at her, expression unreadable, then turned and walked away. Marissa stood up, embarrassed, and told me John didn't mean it the way it came out. That he was under stress, that he'd been trying to teach a lesson. I told her the store payments would stay offline until I decided I could trust them again. Then I shut the door. That evening, I had HR quietly review John's team. I wasn't expecting what came back. 2 formal complaints already sitting in the queue. An intern who said John screamed at him for asking a question during a client pitch. A vendor who said John tried to undercut pricing by lying about internal budget cuts he had no authority to reference. There were emails, screenshots, even a voicemail. By nightfall, my father texted, "Can we talk? This has gone too far." I replied, "No, it hasn't." Silence followed. On the 3rd day, John emailed me. Subject line, apology. 6 words in the body. I shouldn't have broken her glasses. No greeting, no signature, no acknowledgement of Lily as a person. Just a statement. It was the first time he'd ever admitted he was wrong. And I didn't know what to do with that. The box arrived on the 4th day. Small, white, left at the gate like an offering that didn't want to knock. My mother was standing there when I opened it, hands folded, posture careful. Inside were a new pair of glasses, pale lilac, almost identical to the ones John had snapped in half. Same stars, same curve at the temples. She said she'd driven 2 hours to find them. She didn't apologize. I thanked her anyway. Not because it fixed anything, but because refusing would have turned it into a scene, and I wasn't ready for scenes yet. Lily took the glasses gently, tried them on, smiled once, and went back to her room. That night, she slept through without crawling into my bed. It felt like progress. Later that week, I found a handwritten note in the mailbox from my father. He never writes by hand. He emails, bullet points, attachments. The note said he froze at the party, that they'd let John get away with too much for too long, that he understood if I wasn't ready to forgive them. I read it 3 times. Then John showed up at the gate. He didn't try to come in, just stood there, hands in his pockets, eyes down, and asked if he could say something to Lily. Not today, I said, maybe not ever. He nodded like he'd expected that and left without arguing. After that, things shifted. Marissa mailed Lily a charm bracelet with a card that said, "Every girl deserves to feel magical." My parents started calling just to ask how Lily was doing. No defenses, no explanations. John stopped trying to access the systems. Work stabilized in ways I hadn't anticipated. Meetings ended on time. People spoke freely. One manager admitted she'd forgotten what it felt like to be listened to. Lily adjusted faster than I did. She called her new glasses her battle glasses, said they'd survive something important. She didn't ask about John, not once. But I noticed she stopped waving at people first. She waited now. 3 weeks later, Marissa asked if she could drop off Lily's forgotten birthday card. I almost said no. They stayed exactly 10 minutes. John barely spoke. Marissa smiled too much. Lily said thank you and went back to her room. When they left, John nodded at me like we were co-workers passing in a hallway. Not family. Then my parents invited us to dinner. I said no. Then I sat with that answer and changed my mind. Not because I missed them, but because I wanted to see who they were when Lily was watching. They were different. My mother complimented Lily's drawing without correcting her colors. My father listened, while Lily explained her fairy village in exhausting detail. John didn't interrupt, didn't joke, didn't check his phone. Marissa redirected the conversation any time it drifted toward money. Later, Marissa pulled me aside and said she should have spoken up at the party, that she didn't realize how bad it looked until later. She said John had been under stress, not excusing, just explaining. I didn't argue. I didn't forgive her either. I just listened. Small things followed. A fairy book mailed to Lily. Articles about child development forwarded to me. John stayed silent. Marissa added heart emojis to her texts like that fixed something. I hated the part of me that wanted to believe it. Then my mother texted, "I'm proud of Lily for being so well-behaved at dinner." That word stayed with me. Well-behaved. Like survival was manners. A few days later, my father mentioned transferring a small property into Lily's name someday. Said it was for her future. Said she deserved security. I felt my guard lower. Just a little. And that's when my grandmother called. My grandmother almost never calls. She sends cards instead. Real ones. Thick paper. Neat handwriting, sometimes with crisp bills tucked inside like time stopped for her somewhere in the late 90s. So when her name lit up my phone, something in my chest tightened before I even answered. Her voice was quiet, not shaky, not emotional, just low. She said she'd had dinner at my parents' house the night before, said everything seemed pleasant enough, polite, careful. She excused herself to use the bathroom while my parents were clearing the table. When she came back into the hallway, she heard voices from the kitchen. She hadn't meant to listen, but she did. John was laughing. Marissa was laughing too. My parents were there, comfortable, unguarded. They weren't arguing. They weren't conflicted. They were relaxed in a way people only get when they think they're among allies. They were talking about me, about how I'd overreacted, about how Lily would turn spoiled if no one stepped in, about how breaking her glasses was wrong, yes, but not that wrong. John joked that at least Lily learned the world doesn't bend for rich kids. My grandmother said she had to grab the hallway table because her legs felt weak. No one noticed her until she cleared her throat. The kitchen went silent. She left early. When she finished telling me, she asked one question. "Do you still think they've changed?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Something inside me closed, not slammed shut, not shattered, just sealed, like a door that finally found its frame. The next morning, before Lily woke up, I made 3 calls. I told my lawyer to freeze anything related to my father's proposed property transfer. I flagged John's remaining bonuses for audit. Then I called a realtor about selling the lake cabin, the one that was only in my name and that I'd quietly let the family treat as shared. I didn't warn anyone. I didn't explain. I just stopped. I moved Lily to a different school across town, smaller, quieter, gardens instead of branding. Kids who didn't care what shoes she wore. I blocked John. I blocked Marissa. I blocked my mother after she texted, "This is hurting everyone." My father stayed silent, like always. 24 days later, my mother showed up with a lemon loaf and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She said my grandmother had exaggerated, that they'd already talked to her about meddling. I froze. They'd turned on the one person who protected us. I called my grandmother immediately. She said she'd been uninvited from Thanksgiving, told to stop interfering. I invited her to dinner that night. Lily sat beside her the whole time. Later that evening, I got an alert. Someone trying to log into my home security system using an old password John had helped set years ago. I locked everything down. Then I checked Marissa's online store, the one I'd helped launch and still technically controlled. 5 days earlier, someone had submitted a forged ownership transfer. My signature. Faked. The apologies, the gifts, the smiles. They hadn't wanted peace. They wanted access. I flagged it as fraud and sent Marissa a legal notice. That night, Lily asked if Grandma could visit again and if we could bake cupcakes. I said yes. And I deleted every contact tied to my last name. This wasn't a grudge. It was self-defense. For 2 weeks after I cut them off, nothing happened. No calls, no emails, no surprise visits wrapped in baked goods and false concern. The silence wasn't peaceful, but it was real. the kind that doesn't ask anything from you. Lily adjusted to her new school faster than I expected. There were gardens instead of parking lots, art rooms that smelled like glue and wet paper, children who didn't ask what her parents did or what brand her shoes were. She came home with dirt under her nails and stories about beetles and murals and a teacher who wore mismatched socks. She smiled again. I slept better too. Not deeply, not yet, but without waking up braced for impact. One afternoon, my grandmother asked if I could drive her to my parents' house to pick up a sweater she'd left behind weeks earlier. I waited in the car while she went inside. The front door was unlocked. A few minutes passed. Then I heard voices. Calm voices. Planning voices. I stepped into the hallway just far enough to hear the kitchen clearly. John was laughing. Marissa, too. My parents were there, comfortable, strategic. They weren't reminiscing. They were organizing. John talked about contacting an old investor I'd cut off years ago. Marissa mentioned screenshots from emails I'd sent while pregnant, messages they could reframe. My mother nodded, saying maybe this would finally get my attention. My father asked if anyone had talked to a lawyer about Lily's trust. The trust only I controlled. I didn't wait for more. I stepped back outside and texted my grandmother to meet me at the car. She didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. That night, after Lily fell asleep, I opened a private drive I'd kept for years. Receipts, emails, transfers, dates. A folder labeled family contributions. Every loan, every bailout, tuition, rent, medical bills, legal fees. The total sat there in clean black numbers. They'd called me spoiled. They'd lived off me. The next morning, I locked Lily's trust completely, removed all shared access, transferred digital assets into my name, had Marissa removed from every license and platform I'd funded. Then I told my lawyer I wanted a clean break, emotionally, financially, permanently. That night, Lily and I baked cupcakes like nothing was wrong. Chocolate frosting, sprinkles everywhere. At 10:42 p.m., a letter slid under my door. Marissa's handwriting. Not an apology, just disbelief. Family is still family, she wrote. I folded it and put it away. I never replied. They were right about one thing. I had changed. After that, there was silence. Real silence. Not peace, aftermath. I cut off my parents, my brother, everyone tied to that side of the family. The exhaustion lingered, but it wasn't guilt. It was the tiredness that comes from finally putting something heavy down. One night, Lily asked if she'd done something wrong. I held her and told her the only mistake was mine, for waiting too long to choose her. A few days later, she brought home a drawing. Just the two of us under a rainbow. This is what home looks like now, she said. Not everything healed. I still wake up angry some mornings, but I stopped blaming myself for loving people who couldn't love back. We built something quieter instead. Weekend trips, messy kitchens, fairy crowns, simple dinners, safe mornings. It isn't perfect, but it's ours, and it's safe.